Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
Welcome to another edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these very critical times. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. Well, the dust is settling after the throne speech from King Charles a few days ago. He's back over in the UK, of course, and Prime Minister Carney had his first question period, getting mixed reviews about his performance, which I think, as Chantal Hébert claimed, who cares, really? I mean, question period is not where most of the work gets done in Parliament anyway. It's more theater than anything else, and Mr. Carney just got the role, so it's going to take a little while for him to grow into that as far as performance during question period. I, as a taxpayer and as a concerned citizen, am far more interested in far more important matters, such as how's this country going to get out of the hole that it finds itself in these days. And I think to underscore that, I saw a headline in the National Post from one of their pundits there, one of their columnists, that basically said, "Okay, where's the crisis now, Mr. Carney?" And the reference and the gist of the guy's piece was that, all through the campaign, Carney talked about the immediate threat from the United States, and this was a crisis, and our very existence depended on electing he and the Liberal government. Well, and now he hasn't mentioned it. Well, here's a spoiler alert, mister. It's never left. The crisis, the problems, and the threat from the United States is still there. And that's probably never more evident than even this past couple of days when the tariff issue, which has always been there, reared its ugly head once again. There was a court decision by a lower court in the United States that basically said that Trump's whole policy of imposing tariffs unilaterally and arbitrarily because of things like, the supposed fentanyl scare, et cetera, were illegal. Not everything that he did, but a lot of it were, including the tariffs that he has imposed on Canada. And I know the Prime Minister Carney and so many other people in the business world were almost ready to start popping champagne corks and saying, aha, finally the courts have caught up with this. Well, that lasted about 15 minutes until an appeals court further up the chain basically said, no, keep doing them. There is going to be an appeal to this whole thing. But in the meantime, the Trump administration can still impose these tariffs and collect the money. So that was very short-lived. But I think the realization that we have to come to because of that decision and the way that all of a sudden we went from expectations of maybe better days to right back in to the quagmire that we found ourselves in is the realization, and Carney talked about this a number of times during the campaign, and he's mentioned it a few times in some of the speeches he's made subsequent to that too, is if there's one thing that we have learned in the last little while is that we can't rely on the United States to kill the Trump tariff trades. The court system is not going to work there. And that's a simple matter of logistics, really. The system from the smallest court, the tiniest court, at the lowest level, all the way up to the Supreme Court, is stacked by MAGA people. Trump has, in his first term and certainly in this second term, has appointed a series of people that basically control the justice system. The idea about, the basic constitution of government in the United States, about three separate but very equal facets to that, is gone because Trump and the MAGA people certainly control the White House. They control the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they control the Supreme Court. So there is no independent arbiter who's going to look at these situations. They basically get their marching orders from Trump, and everything that comes before them is going to be in Trump's favor. That's just the way things are. It's not right. It's not fair. But it's the way things are. So, we can't hold our breath and say, don't worry about it. These guys are going to find the way and they're going to correct their problems. Not going to happen. And if it does, that's a bonus. But as Carney has told us many times, that means it's up to us to find our own way and to not sever our relationships with the United States, but to alter it, which is something we should have done a long, long time ago. This is not a new problem. This reliance on the U.S. economy is something that's been going on for years. I referenced in a previous podcast a couple of months ago, I guess now, about a great work of fiction that I read from General Richard Bromer, who's 101 years old now. And you've seen him at all the military activities over the last little while. He was there for Remembrance Day and so many other ceremonies. Fascinating man, great Canadian, born in Hamilton, by the way, and an author of some great historical books, but also some historical fiction. And one that he wrote was called Death by Deficit, and it was essentially how the Canadian Prime Minister, in this fictitious scenario that he wrote in the book, had to cave into the American government because of our deficit situation and the fact that our economy was so dependent. And we basically ended up giving away or giving full access to the United States for our fresh water and for our mineral deposits. It was fiction, but it's looking a lot more like reality or a version of reality with the way things are going these days. So this is not new. And that was written back in 1990, I think it was. So this has been going on for quite some time. And you can't turn the Titanic around on a penny. I mean, it's going to take time. First of all, you have to understand that there is a problem. And I think Carney's government does that. And they've already started action. And for those that are saying, yeah, well, when's he going to get around to doing something about it? Well, guess what? He already has. The Canadian government has responded. There have been a few things going on here that I think are trying to ease that dependence that we have on America for so many different things right now. You can't sever it, and Carney reiterated that just the other day, and he's not asking to do that, nor would we want to do that. But we have to understand that we've got to learn to stand on our own 2 feet and be able to deal with the United States from a position of strength. Certainly not equal strength with the Americans. No country on earth can do that, but from our own strength. In other words, we've got to develop our technologies and our economies separate and above from that and deal with the United States in that regard. And we've seen already in the short period of time that the Carney government's been in play here, that's already started to happen. Efforts to basically look for other markets. As a matter of fact, we talked about the fact that the impact on Trump's tariffs are going to have a negative impact on the Canadian economy and Canadian workers. And we've already seen evidence of that, layoffs at auto plants and a concern about people losing their jobs because of people just looking at what's going on here and saying, well, we're not going to spend money anymore. So what Carney has attempted to do, and apparently with a great deal of success, is to expand Canada's markets to other allies, not just to the United States. We're still going to be the number one trading partner, but increase trade with Europe, with Scandinavia, with Asian nations. And the numbers that have come out that validate and verify what's going on is that because of that altered point of view and that altered focus now on looking at other markets, the increased trade and the increased revenue from trade from those new markets that we're now starting to use a lot more has just about made up the difference in the impact that the Trump tariffs were going to have on Canada. We're not there yet, and this is not the answer. You don't put away the toolkit and say, well, that's solved, but it's a good start to what we need to do here, and basically understand that we've got other options here, and we have to explore those options and use those other options. So that's a good thing, and that's got to continue as we look at other markets for our economy and where else we can go. And that only makes sense. I don't want to get into why we didn't do it before. That's, you can't look in the rearview mirror. You have to look forward and say, okay, where are we going to go from here? And the Carney government seems to understand what needs to be done. And it's not just with economic issues, even because of our reliance on the United States and our partnership with the United States over the years. When it comes to the defense of our continent, we have NORAD, and of course, there's been a cooperative sense there for many, many years between the two countries. But Trump, of course, is trying to strong-arm Canada right now with increased defense spending and his gold dome idea, which I already addressed, by the way, in a previous blog and suggested it's in Canada's best interest to go along with that. Now, that doesn't mean you write a blank check and say, okay, Trump, here you go. We want in on this. But as Carney said, if it's going to be to our benefit, then we'll look into it and we can partner with this. But you don't just simply say, okay, here's the money, we're going to be fine here. And to that point, the Canadian military, through the Canadian government, has already made some steps in that regard. I mean, they have again decided that a lot of the military equipment that they're going to need now, because Carney has committed to increase military spending and part of the GDP that's going to be going towards military spending, but he's starting to purchase military arms and munitions and equipment from other dealers, European dealers, Scandinavian dealers, instead of simply relying on U.S. companies to do that. And that's a good thing. Similarly, of course, he's done that with other aspects of things that were going on. For instance, increasing and enhancing our defense systems to the north, already in partnership with the Americans. But the upgraded system that they purchased was from Australia, not from the United States. And again, to show that, first of all, that's good to strengthen the bond between Australia and Canada. Probably doesn't hurt our relationship with Australia and the Five Eyes intelligence agencies either. But at the same time, it lessens our dependence upon the United States. Because if you're depending on one individual or one country to do everything for you, we're going to get our arms from there, our munitions from there, our economy growth is going to be from there. If they decide to shut the switch off, and Trump has threatened to do that, then we're screwed. So we need to diversify, and Carney understands that. And as we've just talked about here, we've seen evidence that many steps have already been taken, and that's a very positive thing. And we're starting to see the results of that. And as I say, this is not the end of it. That doesn't mean, okay, we're fine now. It's just the first step. Because there's so much more that has to be done. There's going to be negotiations about this Golden Dome thing. And as I said during a podcast a little while ago, I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't even know. As a matter of fact, I'm skeptical it's even going to happen. But there does have to be some enhancements to the early warning systems to the north. Both the U.S. and Canadian representatives know that. Whether it's going to be this Gold Dome or something else, who knows? But Canada needs to be there, and they need to step up. Report released last week indicated that the 1905 decision, I guess it was, that by the Paul Martin government at that time, to not be a partner with the United States, that was George W. Bush at that time, with enhanced defense spending, of course, in the northern border, haunted Canadian governments for many, many years, not just with the Americans, but with other G7 partners and other partners that were looking at this and saying, well, where's Canada's commitment here? That seems to be changing through Prime Minister Carney and the efforts that are going on here. And those are the sorts of things that are going to enhance our position on a global basis with our partners and at the same time decrease our reliance on the United States. And that's the goal here. That we need to understand that we can't simply look to the United States for everything. The other stuff is going to happen. I don't know, nor nobody knows how the tariff situation is going to work itself out, if at all. There has to be some sort of a renegotiation with the trade deals that are going on. And don't forget, as we've talked about, the whole reason that we're in such an economic quandary these days with the United States is because basically Donald Trump has reneged on his obligations and his commitment about this upgraded NAFTA deal that he and his government renegotiated some years ago. As we've talked about, when he signed it at the time, he said it was the greatest trade deal in the history of the world. It's going to benefit everybody. Now he said, I'm not going to comply with that anymore. And at the same time, by the way, he's accusing China of breaking their trade deal. So it's okay for Trump to renege on his commitments, but he doesn't want anybody else to do it for him. But that's Trump. And again, you got to accept that that's the way this guy is. You don't have to like it, but you have to work around that and understand that that's the way this guy's going to react. And we need to I think, conduct our business accordingly, that this is not a strong ally anymore. The United States may, in fact, want to be a strong ally, but the guy in the White House, the guy who's calling the shots right now, has other ideas and other ambitions. And it's not about the well-being of North America. It's not about the well-being of Canada-U.S. relations. It's all about Trump. I mean, we saw that on his most recent trip to Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago. Invariably, when world leaders go to other countries, it's to try to shore up trade deals or trade commitments in unilateral economic deals or something. Trump basically went over there and kissed the butt of the Saudis, who have given him all kinds of money. I mean, you all saw the picture that he took there. The one guy on one side of him was basically the prince that was in charge of getting Khashoggi murdered and chopped up a few years ago. That was on his order. The other guy was an Al-Qaeda operative who's now in Saudi Arabia. Those are the sorts of people that Donald Trump hangs out with. And what did he come back to the States with after that trip to Saudi Arabia? Well, a $400 billion jet, which is basically gone to him. It was a gift, but we found out through records now that have been released, not through Trump's office, but from other sources, that it was not a gift, that Trump begged the Saudis to give him that jet and to build it. And the other element to this, it doesn't get a whole lot of publicity, is that Trump signed a deal with the Saudi government for them to finance another Trump entertainment complex in Saudi Arabia. So this was all personal gain. It had nothing at all to do with the betterment of the United States economy or anybody else. It's all about Donald Trump. And that's always been the way it's been with him and always the way it's going to be. So we got to, take off the rose-colored glasses and understand who we're dealing with and what the implications of that are going to be. And I'm pretty confident right now, and I'm heartened by the attitude and the steps that the Carney government has already taken. It's early days. I mean, they've only been in office for a few weeks now, but it seems as if they've got the right attitude and the right idea as to how they want to move forward on this. It's not going to be easy. And there's going to be some fallbacks, and there's going to be some tough economic times. We know that. But at the end of all of this, we're just hoping that it's going to be a better place for us here in Canada, and not just with our relationship with the United States, but with our allies right around the world, too, which is probably something that we have ignored and not as paid anywhere near as much attention to as we should have over the years. And maybe, finally, from the indications we get from the Carney government in these early days, we realize that. And we're looking for better relationships and better days ahead. Here's hoping. And we'll talk about all that, of course, as it proceeds down the next couple of months and years. That's it for this edition of the podcast. So glad you're with us today. You can catch us, of course, on Substack, on Spotify, Apple, certainly on YouTube, Blue Sky, TikTok, so many different platforms right now. Always great to get your feedback on that. Keep that coming. We love to hear from you. We love to hear your ideas as well. Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer.
Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.